I want to explain to you what is the impediments of immigration reform. Contrary to popular belief, Republicans want it. Republicans want a reform in our immigration process. What's the impediments to that? Well, sanctuary cities and amnesty. And these are not new issues. People think sanctuary cities is something new. Sanctuary cities have been around since the 1960s. They were usually started by cities that had radical, progressive socialists, primarily in California, running their government. The first official sanctuary city that declared themselves openly as a sanctuary city is, ironically, Berkeley, California, which did it in 1971. Sanctuary cities they got traction publicly in the 1980s and 1990s. They were there, they had the policies, but they didn't openly declare themselves sanctuary cities. And the first major city to do so was in 1985, and that was Chicago. And then shortly thereafter, San Francisco, the same year. 2 years later, Los Angeles declared itself a sanctuary city. That was in 1987. So they're not a new thing. They've been an impediment from pretty much the very beginning. There's this perception that the Republicans don't want to do bipartisan immigration reform. And like I said, it's always been amnesty with the Democrats. Well, in 1986, President Reagan signed into law what was called the Immigration Enforcement and Reform Act in 1986. And this granted a level of amnesty in this compromised bipartisan law. And this level of amnesty and this reform and enforcement that was put in place were supposed to make things better. They didn't. Exacerbated the process. More and more people came here because they now had the perception, and it was a true perception, that if they got here and they stayed and they didn't get caught, that they would then eventually gain a protected status, amnesty. So this actually opened the floodgates for a decade. Until 1996, there was another law passed, and it was signed by Clinton. And Clinton was over the barrel because he had a Republican majority in both houses, both chambers, and he was running for re-election. So he signed into the Illegal Immigration Enforcement and Immigrant Financial Responsibility Act. I know it's a mouthful. This was in 1996, September of 1996, less than 2 months before the presidential election in 1996. If he would not have signed this bill, because it was extremely popular on both sides of the aisle, he would not have been reelected. And he knew that. So what this law did is it put into place the framework of today's immigration enforcement. And it also made it illegal for states to provide benefits to illegal aliens that stemmed from federal funding. In other words, programs that were administered by the state but funded with federal dollars. Now, what you don't realize is a lot of state programs are funded with federal dollars. Medicaid, cash assistance, WIC. All these programs are state administered with federal money. The school lunch program is all these things are federal money administered by the state. And the reason they put that law in place was these sanctuary cities that existed since the 70s were providing benefits to people who were not U.S. citizens. And this law didn't just cover U.S. Illegal aliens. It covered people who were in the country legally but were not U.S. citizens. So you would think that this law would be enforced. And what it did kind of slow immigration down for a time. Illegal immigration, I should say. Illegal aliens. But then the states violated the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution and continued to fund these programs to illegal aliens anyway. So you had 16 states with a couple hundred cities in violation in law, but those programs, these 16 states, like I said, were in violation of federal law, and also in violation of the supremacy clause of the Constitution. And to this day, they still provide it. So here you have two immigration reform laws that were not being enforced because of the sanctuary cities. Every time an immigration reform law comes up, there is this insistence by Democrats for amnesty. So the real impediment is not the Republicans, it's the Democrats. For those of you that are not too smart people who have smartphones, this is, you could please feel free to fact check me. You have the names of the legislation. You have the names of the presidents who signed these illegal immigration reform laws. So please feel free to fact check me. I don't believe you will. What you will do is you'll turn around and hurl insults at me in the comments section. And guess what? I don't give a shit. So call me fat. That's your favorite one. Call me fat. The party of no body shaming, calling a guy fat. I just find that ironic. So y'all that agree with me and y'all that don't, stay safe. God bless. Hang loose.